Autofiles, we continue the story of BMW. Recently, we saw the origins of the company's success in the 1930s and the first steps towards rebuilding after the Second World War. By the mid-1960s, prosperity had returned, and the Munich concern were using motorsport to develop their engineering prowess and to promote their cars. BMW made the 2-litre version of their 4-cylinder engine available for sports and Formula car racing. They were successful with constructors like March and Chevron, and also with their own Dornier-built car. At the head of this success, watched here by famous journalist Dennis Jenkinson, was longtime BMW driver Dieter Quester.
I think it was the right choice to race with BMW when I made the choice in '65. And I was 3 times European Championship. I have had a lot of success with all the BMW racing cars, and couldn't be wrong to stay with BMW such a long time. I must say as well, how can I tell you, it was more or less a love affair.
In the late 1960s, important events happened to secure BMW's future and reputation. They produced the 2002, and with a fuel-injected and eventually turbocharged engine, the car was virtually unbeatable in touring car races. The two-door version had a 1600cc engine version as well. Boosted by the success of the 2002 and its victories, BMW continued to put money into development. As a result of doing so, a new family of 6-cylinder engines was produced. The 6-cylinder 2-litre engines could be fitted in place of the normal 2-litre 4-cylinder. The CS and CSL models were built by Karmann at Osnabrück in northern Germany and were to replace the 2002 and its derivatives in racing. Dieter Quester kept himself busy climbing the hills. This form of motorsport always attracted great crowds in Germany. Through hill climbing, pre-war heroes Manfred von Brautitsch, Rudolf Caracciola and Hans Stuck made their reputations. Stuck had remarried after the war and had a young son, also named Hans. Dieter Quester found himself with another Stuck in the team as young Hans came to the fore to drive in the 1970s in the new BMW CSLs. Other drivers of note also appeared in these cars. Here at Spa in the 24-hour touring car race, a young Niki Lauda is about to climb aboard a BMW. Helmut Kellner's won the European Championship 3 times. Spa was home to perhaps the greatest long-distance test for saloon cars. It's here that BMW were able to build their reputation. They took on Mercedes, Chevrolet, Jaguar, Rover, Ford and Alfa Romeo. BMW has won the race a record 16 times. Dr. Alex van Valkenhausen played an important role at BMW from the 1930s onwards. As head of the engineering department, he was responsible for the development of both the 2-litre 4-cylinder and the 6-cylinder range of engines. That development played its part in BMW's competition success. BMW followed the old adage that racing improves the breed.
It's the life of the car. The driver feels the power and the smoothness and every characteristic of the engine. If he is fond of driving, it is very fun to have a good engine. It's therefore very important that the designer of the engine is a good driver himself and feels what is wanted from the engine. When I got the order to design this engine, nobody thought about racing. But to tell the truth, I did. Therefore, I designed the engine so strong and so effective that it really could be used for racing later on. And for production, this engine was also good because it was very strong and had a long life in normal street use. It was therefore a very modern engine with overhead camshaft, wheel wheels and 5-bearing crankshaft. At that time, these things were only used for a racing engine and nobody had it in production.
In racing form, the turbocharged 6-cylinder engine, bored out to 3.5 litres, was capable of producing 850 brake horsepower, an enormous increase on the original engine. The original 1600cc design was put to good use in Grand Prix racing in the 1980s when the 1500cc turbo era came along. The engine was developed to produce over 1,500 horsepower for very short periods during practice. BMW also raced their 5 Series saloon in races between the production of the CSL ending and the introduction of the new 6 Series. While the 5 Series was a capable car, it was the new 6 Series that took over from where the CSL left off. The 1600cc 4-cylinder engine remained in production until the late 1980s. BMW had another surprise in store, producing new 6-cylinder engines ranging from 2 litres and upwards. These set the standards for smoothness and performance. BMW have stayed with the front-engine, rear-wheel drive layout for their entire saloon range. BMW employees have a reputation for long service. Dieter Quester has raced cars for the company for over 30 years.
It was in '68, and we started with the 2002 TI, the European Championship, and then we changed over to the 2002 TI, and this was the car. With this car we beat Porsche, and we win the championship again in '68.
The CSL was a car which set new standards.
Oh yeah, this was a great time with the CSL. I remember when I saw first time the CSL with the wing on the roof, the big wing on the rear, and when we started this car, or when we were first time out at Nürburgring, the car was at least, I think, 15 seconds quicker than the old CSL. So it was a big improvement, and this was more or less the base for a lot of successes the following 10 years. IMSA, European Championship, and so on. So the CSL was a very, very successful car, and as well a good-looking car.
Hans Stuck Jr. introduced an aggressive driving style.
In my very early races, in the beginning, I was driving so sideways because I really want to be very quick that people used to say when I came in for a pit stop, the mechanics, they didn't have to clean the windshield, they only had to clean the doors because all the dirt and the bugs were on the side because of my sideways driving. So they said, this guy is really crazy, he's ruining all the tires, the suspensions, and he's running over the curbs, and they don't want to have me as a racing driver. But then finally, I convinced them by my way of driving, and it worked out quite good.
In the early 1970s, BMW established a proper competition department, and it was headed by Ford's Jochen Nierpasch, with Alex von Falkenhausen as technical director. In addition to senior drivers, BMW's junior driver program was important from the 1970s to the 1990s. Among BMW's junior drivers of the 1970s were Formula One graduates Eddie Cheever, Jody Scheckter, and the Swiss Marc Schurer, who would later become their competition director. BMW took their cars to Le Mans to challenge for class honours in the 24-hour, and the 635 acquitted itself well, producing a reliable performance against much faster opposition, regularly chasing the Porsches. Jochen Nierpasch, flanked by drivers of the day Ronnie Peterson, Dieter Quester and Brian Redman, with Jackie X talking to Jochen Maas. Unlike many of their competitors, who seem only to understand international success, BMW have long appreciated that it's important to do well in national championships throughout the world. America is a particularly important market for BMW. They took the time and effort to make sure that their cars were competitive in American races. BMW established national teams in saloon and touring car races in many countries, and the spearhead of this was initially the American market. BMW felt that competing with Porsche on the circuit could also give them an advantage in the marketplace as well. The development of this has been BMW's establishment of a manufacturing plant in the USA. Their philosophy has changed little from the 1970s. Jochen Nierpasch speaking at that time.
At BMW, the same engineers who are working on the racing engines are also working on the production engines. And for example, the racing engineers, they are always under heavy time pressure. So the engineers have really to work flat out, and they have to have unique ideas to come very fast to a good result. The result has to be more power. And they can handle their normal engineering problems for the production much easier. And I think that's the main difference between a company like BMW and a company who goes racing only for PR reasons and hasn't got the technical high standard in their normal production cars.
BMW did compete successfully at Le Mans in partnership with McLaren in the Gordon Murray-designed F1. This was McLaren's and the world's ultimate driver's car. BMW could call on a vast pool of drivers, many of whom had had a long association with the company. Returning to touring cars, Dieter Quester notes how they've changed over the years.
I must say the change from the touring cars, let's say from the 1800 TISA to the DTM cars, was really a very, very big change regarding to tires, brakes, engine-wise, suspension and so on. I must say not so in the Formula 2 car. I mean, I drove modern Formula cars, but when I jumped in yesterday in our Dornier Formula 2, the difference was not so as from the 635, let's say, to the DTM car. So, but from the TISA 1800 to a DTM car, that's, I mean, such a big change you wouldn't believe.
The only Formula 2 car called a BMW had a chassis built by aircraft company Dornier, but it was a factory effort.
The design was coming from BMW, and that's the car we have here. It's my car from Hockenheim in the, when it was 70, when I beat Clay Regazzoni. And I must say, when I got in the car on Friday and I started the engine and buckle up, it was the same feeling like now 26 years ago. And the car is running quite well. So I must say this 26 years when I drove the car last time seems to me like 5 years. No more.
After using the Dornier chassis, BMW supplied engines to March for Formula 2. Here's Hans Stuck after a win. BMW paid serious attention to their drivers' fitness and preparation. The junior drivers program was the start of this. Drivers in Formula 2 had sponsorship, but sometimes had little direct money themselves. Through their BMW contract, they were paid properly and learned to take care of themselves and their business interests. It paid off for BMW because many of them stayed under contract for further years. Mark Schurer was one of the most successful of the junior drivers. He retained his BMW connections throughout a career that took him through Formula 2 and into Formula 1. Eddie Cheever returned to the USA for kart racing. Mark Schurer went on to win the Formula 2 championship with a BMW engined car. BMW's production-based engines were successful for many years before specialist engines took over. Mark Schurer returned as a competition director.
I own BMW a lot because they brought me up to Formula 1, and I still, like to do something for them. So, being behind the pit wall, doing something else means also for me, the positive feeling I had, I can give it to somebody else.
BMW introduced a different type of car in the late 1970s. This is the mid-engined Group 5 racer with 850 brake horsepower from its 3.5-litre engine. It was a development of the M1 that was first built in 1978. Having been first seen at the Paris Salon, the M1 took part in a series of one-make races. The Pro Car series matched Grand Prix drivers of the day in identical cars throughout Europe. The races took place before the Grand Prix, this one at Monaco. There was some rugged driving. The engine was a 4-valve per-cylinder 277 brake horsepower 3.5-litre 6, which was also seen in the M635. In modified form, this car produced 470 brake horsepower. The cars could also shift a barrier quite well too. Mark Schurer is proud of his long association with BMW.
Yes, it makes me very proud, and of course I've been with, I've driven many cars. It's my whole career is here. For example, today I'm driving my junior team BMW, the one I started my career with BMW. The Benetton is here with a turbo-powered engine. The Brabham is here as a show car, which I've driven together with Nelson Piquet. So it's a lot of memories here. So it makes me very proud, and a lot to think about the past.
Jochen Neerpasch tried to convince the BMW board to enter Formula 1 with a turbo engine, but was refused, and he left the company. In 1980, BMW management was persuaded to change its mind by Neerpasch's replacement, Dieter Stappert, and the company announced that it would build a Formula 1 turbocharged engine for the Brabham team. The engine was first tested at the end of 1980 and began racing in 1982, winning its first race with Nelson Piquet in Canada in June. The engines went on to score 8 more wins in Formula 1 and took Piquet to the World Championship in 1983. BMW powered Benetton's first win in Mexico in 1986, when BMW contracted driver Gerhard Berger was victorious. At the end of 1986, BMW announced that it was withdrawing from Formula 1 and the rights to the engines were sold to Megatron and continued to be raced by the Arrows team in 1987 and 88. After the turbo era finished, BMW concentrated on touring cars. What was Dieter Questa's favourite of the many BMWs he raced?
635 was the car when we have to beat Tom Walkinshaw with the Volvos and the Jaguars. So it was a great time, and the end of the story was we win again the championship with the 635.
Questa had some highly regarded teammates, including Stuck and Berger.
The problem, I drove with Gerhard I remember in Brunner. And the problem with Stucky was they like to have us in each team, but not together.
There was one incident when Dieter tried to sell Stuck's house without him knowing.
I advertised Stucky's house. It was a house for, let's say, 2 million Deutschmark, and I advertised the house in a very famous paper in Germany for 200,000 Deutschmark. And Saturday morning he had Brookstead on his ground, so it was a big problem afterwards for me, I must say.
By the mid-1980s, the reign of the 635 was over, and BMW, faced with opposition from Rover and Jaguar, decided to move forward. One of the great stars of the 635 era was the Italian Roberto Ravaglia, who started off as co-driver to both Hans Stuck and to Berger. It was Ravaglia who notched up important wins in the 635 and went on to have even more in the car's successor. After a final win with the Italian driver Emanuele Pirro, it was Ravaglia who took over the forefront of racing in both the European Touring Car Championship and the short-lived World Touring Car Championship with the M3. Ravaglia and the Venezuelan ex-motorcycle world champion Johnny Cecotto raced the M3 all over the world, including Australia at the famous 1,000-kilometre Bathurst race, and acquitted themselves well. By the 1990s, national touring car championships were for 2-litre cars. BMW had signed up a fine array of drivers. Among them was the British driver Steve Soper, who'd been with BMW a long time. He reflects on BMW's policy of grooming young drivers.
I don't know really. I mean, we still have some young drivers that are employed by BMW. I mean, my two teammates this year in Germany are both 25-year-olds. But I mean, again, they stick with the people they want to stick with. And I think if you look at Jochen Winkelhock's been there 6-7 years. Cecotto's been there. He signed the contract and started when I started. And Roberto Ravaglia's been there 10 years.
BMW returned to Formula One in 2000, providing 3-litre V10 engines for the Williams team. For 2006, BMW has taken the step to become a Formula One team in its own right by purchasing the Swiss Sauber team. Formula One still represents an engineering challenge and a promotional opportunity for BMW to demonstrate its engineering skills into the future.